When I was at the age of 38, two roads diverged in a yellow wood. And sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. And I thought to myself, I need to create something lasting, something that can be felt, tasted, and touched. And maybe someday handed over to my children. And then I thought of many things to do, and kind of middle-age crisis romantically, I settled on the notion of becoming a winemaker. Of course, like all middle-age crisis men, I could have bought a timeshare in Tuscany. But I didn't. I did it under one crucial condition, that my wine would be made with fruit that could grow and thrive in the cold, hard northern climate where I lived. And so my eyes, of course, fell on the crop of garden apples that fell all around me in droves each fall to become nothing but the sustenance for next year's unused crop. And I thought to myself, I will become a cider maker. And my brain, that had previously been centered around the making and the business of virtual things, things that could not be touched, that did not exist in the physical realm, namely software, now started working on the ability to make things that could be touched, that could be used. And at that, using fruit that was considered waste. And people naturally told me I was out of my mind. You're not going to become a winemaker here, much less a cider maker. And after a year of trial and error, it turned out they were right. A dry quality cider could not be made with the apples that we grow up here in this subarctic climate. Because the apple tradition in my country is dying. We don't grow cider apples. We want supermarket apples now. They're going to be red and shiny, right? We used to have hundreds of varieties. Now we have 5 or 6 varieties. But these dessert apples that we grow in our garden and commercially are not suited for making a dry wine. They have enough sugar, but they're also very acid, very tart. So if you ferment the sugar into alcohol, you turn out a sour cider. And so I was forced to raise my eyes from what I was doing to find another path, because I still didn't want to forget about my dream. And it's as if by a stroke of fate, I find another path on a similar longitude, but on the other side of the world. In the late 1980s, a winemaker in Quebec in Canada named Christian Bartomeuf, he had an orchard in his vineyard. He never used the apples. So he brought his knowledge of making a world-class ice wine into the making of a sweet cider. An ice wine made from dessert apples rather than grapes. And in 1990, he presented the first cider de glace, the first ice cider, to the world. And since it's conquered the world. Now, as this wine was established, a denomination was written by the Canadian government saying that in order to call something an ice cider, a cidre de glace, you had to use natural cold to concentrate your apple juice, making it sweet enough to ferment a sweet wine. You freeze your juice outside in 1,000-liter tanks. You bring it in to thaw. You tap a small part of each tank, and out comes this sugar-heavy starting juice with huge amounts of sugar in it. Now, in a sweet wine, as you understand, sugar is very important, right? But equally important in a sweet wine is acidity to balance the sweetness. And so suddenly, these apples that I couldn't use to make a traditional cider, and the climate that limited my choice of crop to make a wine, the very limitations that would seem insurmountable to become a winemaker in the Northern Dark, were actually the vehicles that brought it all forward. And this story of how I wanted to do something else, and how I did it, and what became of it, has reverberated quite a lot. And so I stand here with a dream within reach, to become a winemaker, to use fruit that belongs to my landscape, to create something that can be touched, felt, and tasted, and maybe, someday, handed over to my children. And so somewhere ages and ages hence, 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Thank you.